It started innocently enough. At least that's how I thought of it. I had been planning some landscaping updates around my house. New fencing, a small vegetable garden, and a few decorative shrubs. Nothing fancy, just a few touches to make the property look nicer. I had even submitted plans to the HOA months earlier and received informal approval for most of it. But then Karen noticed. Of course, she noticed. Karen always notices. One afternoon, while I was putting the finishing touches on a raised flower bed, I saw her across the street with her notebook, pacing back and forth like a general inspecting the battlefield. She scribbled furiously, occasionally pointing her pen at my property. Later that day, she called the HOA office to report me, claiming I had built unapproved structures and violated community aesthetic rules. She even went so far as to involve the local code enforcement office. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. Code enforcement will be inspecting your property on Thursday morning. I wasn't worried. I knew my permits were in order, my plans approved, and my structures were completely within regulations. But I had a nagging feeling that Karen's involvement would make this inspection unnecessarily stressful. Thursday morning arrived, and as the code enforcement officer pulled up, I waved him over and explained everything. He was professional and polite, but I could tell Karen had already been spreading her dramatic version of events to him. "She's claiming you built a structure without approval," I explained, leading him to my flower beds and newly fenced garden. "But I have every email, every permit, and every HOA approval to back this up." The officer nodded and began his inspection. Karen, of course, had stationed herself on the sidewalk, glaring at every movement. She whispered to passing neighbors, pointing fingers, making wild gestures as if I were building an illegal fortress. Everything went smoothly until the officer reached the backyard fence. Karen had apparently told him I'd constructed a wall that blocked the entire property line, exaggerating wildly as usual. "Sir," she shouted from the sidewalk, "he's trying to take over the entire block. This is a hazard." I tried not to roll my eyes. "Karen, it's a standard 6-foot privacy fence," I said calmly. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Can I see the permit and approval paperwork?" I handed over a neat folder containing every email, letter, and stamped approval. The officer flipped through it, nodding slowly. "Looks legitimate. No violations here." Karen's face fell. "Well, you can't just... You're breaking the spirit of the rules." "Actually," the officer said with a small smile, "the spirit of the rules is that homeowners follow the written regulations. You're free to complain, but as far as code enforcement is concerned, there's nothing to cite." Karen's jaw dropped. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She stomped her foot and muttered something about corruption, then stormed off down the street. The officer finished his inspection and gave me a thumbs up. "You're all clear. Good job keeping your records organized." That made this a lot easier. But the story didn't end there. Karen, furious at having lost her imaginary battle, escalated things to the HOA board. She demanded that I be fined for willful violations and threatened to have me removed from the neighborhood. I calmly replied with copies of all my approvals, documentation of the inspection, and a short letter explaining Karen's repeated false claims. The HOA board reviewed everything and, unsurprisingly, sided with me. Not only did they reject her complaint, but they also issued a warning to Karen. Any further frivolous complaints could result in suspension of her HOA privileges. Word spread through the neighborhood. Karen had spent weeks spreading rumors and trying to make me look like the rule breaker, only to be proven entirely wrong. People started avoiding her dramatic rants, and a few neighbors even thanked me for handling the situation with patience and composure. A few weeks later, I was tending to my garden when a neighbor leaned over the fence. "I have to say," she said, smiling, "Karen has never been right about anything. I can't believe she tried to get you in trouble over a fence." I chuckled. "It's not worth getting angry over. I just keep my paperwork in order and let the truth speak for itself." And that's exactly what happened. Karen continued her endless crusades, but no one took her seriously after that. Meanwhile, I enjoyed my garden, my fence, and my peace. fully confident that even the most aggressive HOA tyrant couldn't intimidate me when I knew my rights. It was a simple lesson. Preparation, patience, and proper documentation are far more powerful than yelling, threats, or endless drama. Karen may have called code enforcement on me, but in the end, her jaw dropped when she found out who I truly was: a meticulous, law-abiding homeowner who refused to be bullied.